Rasheed Wallace, a name that's been making a lot of noise, one of the most skilled power forwards in the 2000s, way ahead of his time. When looking back at the best fours, we think of the names like Tim Duncan, Kevin Garnett, Dirk Nowitzki, and even the prime Chris Webbers and Jermaine O'Neals of the world got way more hype and mentioned more than Sheed. Despite being retired from the NBA for almost a decade, Sheed absolutely gets the players' respect regardless of the lack of eye-popping numbers, all-star appearances, or accolades. Just looking up his rewards, Wallace nowhere near a top 75 player. But is he a top 75 talent? Absolutely. Likely will never get in the Hall of Fame, not as a player at least. Basketball Reference gave him an 8.6% chance. How's it going, guys? My name's Wilson. Here's what four-time NBA champion Andre Iguodala said about the former four-time All-Star Summer 2022 that made everybody lose their minds.
Rasheed Wallace.
Awesome player.
Rasheed Wallace.
Yep.
Probably could have been top 5 player in the league for a 10-year stretch. He just chose. I'll do my thing over here.
Right.
He was shooting threes from half court. No, he was shooting half court shots, left-handed and right-handed.
Yeah.
If Rasheed Wallace played in modern day basketball today, if he played in our league today, he'd be the top 5 player in the league.
I don't think
he'd be better than Giannis, and I love Giannis.
A top 5 player in the league, which is an absolute stretch. Rasheed, despite being a multiple-time All-Star, had top 10 talent, but was never even close to being a top 5 player in the game. In his prime, up there as a top 5 power forward. Aside from Giannis, big men a decade after Wallace's playing days must be versatile than ever before. Iggy did speak facts about Sheed shooting half-court shots. One of the most underrated game-tying shots you'll ever see happened in 2007. Joel Embiid almost had another similar outcome versus the Suns, but couldn't quite connect. Given the Embiid and Jokic's of the world, the inside out, posting up, being aggressive, knocking down the 3-ball, solid handles, decent passing for a big, Rasheed Wallace, responsible for revolutionizing the power forward position, doesn't get enough credit for it. Could play both the 4 and 5, but his reputation as a hothead, the master of technical fouls, the moment he was so intimidating.
Timeout LA. Whack! Get out!
The referee had enough, thrown him out the game just by looking at him. At times, his greatness on the court gets absolutely forgotten by his brashiness and attitude. After being announced as Lakers assistant coach under former Detroit teammate Darvin Ham, here's what one of the game's greatest power forwards said about Sheed's addition and how he'll be able to help Anthony Davis.
My dog Rasheed Wallace on the bench for Big Ham. Hey, listen, I think this is great for this Laker team. I think Anthony Davis needs an influence that he can have, someone in his ear. Listen, Rasheed Wallace is one of the best fucking power forwards and players to ever play in our league. He's full of knowledge. He hasn't shared that knowledge with the world. But I talked basketball with him several times. He is nothing below a genius and a mastermind when it comes to the block. He understands everything about both ends of the ball when it comes to scoring and also defending. I think he's going to be great for Anthony Davis. I think he's going to be great for LeBron James. I think he's going to be great for this Laker team, straight up and down.
Not only was Garnett praising about his knowledge, but KG saying Rasheed's one of the best power forwards and players to play in our league. Both played the same position. Looking at the player matchup comparisons, 25 games apiece, exactly 500 against each other, dead even in the playoffs as well. Wallace held Garnett to just 38.5% shooting in the 2000 playoffs, a 3-1 Blazers round 1 win, while KG got revenge in 2008. When asked in the $1 Million Worth of Game podcast, KG had to name 12 guys he'd choose on his team, and guess who were one of the names mentioned?
From this basketball period. Who your team? 12. Who you picking? I'm talking about from the history of basketball. It can be from back in the day now. Who is your 12?
Sheed at 4, and then I'm going Shaq at 5, coming off the bench. She was a tough man. Anybody play with Sheed know what I'm talking about. Tough, man.
Not even Tim Duncan or Dirk Nowitzki, the top tier players at the power forward position in Garnett's time.
But Rasheed Wallace was never talk real shit to me, but he was just hard. He was long, could never get his shot. He would put arc on the ball, shot a 3, never put the ball on the floor. I would always, get up in and make him, put the ball there. He would never do that. Like, he was just a tough cover for me.
The toughest matchup KG had to cover, gotta hear it to believe it.
But my toughest cover was probably Rasheed Wallace. No disrespect to Timmy. No disrespect to any of the other 4s and 3s I played.
Rasheed Wallace gave Garnett the most problems.
Chuck and Rasheed, man, don't get enough on it, man. Straight up, because of all this other shit that they want you to be glossed up in. They wasn't that. They were just bucket getters. You know what I'm saying? She was a tough, man. Anybody play with Sheed know what I'm talking about.
KG going on to say Sheed and not Tim Duncan was his toughest opponent. Prime Rasheed could literally have demanded the ball more and continued to cook. Nobody was stopping his turnaround fadeaway shot. Over 5 years ago from KG Area 21, the 15-time All-Star himself responded to some questions on the toughest competition he faced. To double confirm, listen to the first name he mentioned.
Toughest competition in my prime had to be Rasheed Wallace, Tim Duncan, Chris Webber.
Here's another soundbite from Garnett on who he hated playing against most.
Who was the player that you hate to play the most? Mine was Rasheed Wallace, so long, couldn't guard him, couldn't mess with him, couldn't block the shot. Totally frustration for me.
Further proves Sheed earned the ultimate respect from NBA legends, 7-time All-Star and one of the best players in his prime Tracy McGrady, and one of the most creative scorers of the 2000s, Jamal Crawford, shares some thoughts on an episode of What's Burning with Steven Jackson and how incredible Sheed was.
Who Rasheed Wallace was? Talk to us, T-Mac.
Probably the most talented big man I've ever seen.
Man, you saying something, man. You saying something. You saying something.
Probably the most talented. I don't even know what else to add on that. Probably the most talented, skillful big man I've ever seen, bro. He had it all. He had it all. And like I was talking about Vince shooting left hand, she was the same way, bro. Same way. Man, look. I used to come, like going to Portland, show up to shoot around, and we'll come on the court, and I'll see Sheed coming off the court. She'd have on some sweatpants and some Timbs on. Yeah. I'm looking like, this man just don't give a damn, dog.
Talented and skilled, the perfect sum to describe Sheed. Jamal Crawford brought up these guys and mentioned Sheed in the same category.
My rookie year, we played Karl Malone, Chris Webber, Kevin Garnett, Tim Duncan, and Rasheed. And we're on one of our West Coast trips. And I said, you know what? Sheed's as talented as any of them. It was unbelievable to see him in person, to see how effortless the game was, how easy it was. He wasn't even playing for numbers, none of that. Like, he was just playing to win. And he was so cold. Great team player.
Wallace in a lot of ways, offensive game just as polished as those guys, but known for drawing a lot of attention, walking into the arena with size likely 4XL's hockey jerseys, wearing Timbs, and anything non-basketball you can imagine. I looked at the player matchup between T-Mac and Sheed, and the game's very lopsided, 21 total, 16 wins for a Sheed-led team, averages of over 18 and 8, nearly 2 blocks, and we're talking about a slow-paced era with low scoring. One of the first stretch fours, Sheed took many long twos at the time, very acceptable back then. All them shots outside 17 feet would be 3-pointers in today's NBA. 7 seasons with Portland, shot 45% from mid-range, 72% at the rim, could have easily averaged 20 plus for many seasons, but elected to play more team ball, being the leading scorer for the Blazers in the 2000 season, a 59-win team, his first All-Star selection at age 25 after a Game 1 stinker against the Lakers in the 2000 Conference Finals. Wallace averaged 25.5 points, 8 rebounds on 49% shooting, 7 of 10 from deep, games 2 to 7. If those Blazers played in today's spread out style, Wallace would have attempted at least 3 times as many threes that series, not to mention his 30-point game 7. If it wasn't for his team choking a 15-point fourth quarter lead, Wallace and Portland would have likely beaten the Pacers and won a Finals MVP, being the lone All-Star that season on his team. Here's what former All-Star and one of the most exciting players of the 2000s, Vince Carter, said about Rasheed Wallace.
Well, I will say this, you can say what you want to say about Sheed. That guy loves the game, and his knowledge of the game is bar none. I mean, he just plays the game. He still plays the game now, and what he's doing, he's a high school coach now.
Right.
Yeah, doing great things. So, I mean, his energy,
man,
his passion, on and off the court. I mean, he's like, look at him, man. he's a great guy, to be around.
Shaq speaking a little on Sheed.
Well, first of all, I'm not known for defense.
Okay.
Second of all, he was the only guy I remember. Him and Ben Baker, they played long. Like his turnaround.
Yeah,
man. It was just, he just kept it up high.
Right. Get to it.
Early 2008, Those of you who watched TNT at the time remember how Charles Barkley always praises Rasheed and marveled at his ability to shoot the three and do it all. If you put Michael Jordan's mind in Wallace's body, Charles said he'd be the best player in the NBA. I never seen a guy who's 7 feet tall who can post you up and shoot threes, but for him to only have 23 and 15 once every 2 or 3 years is an absolute travesty. Kenny Smith responded, over 82 games, something doesn't trigger Rasheed to say he could dominate. Sheed could be dominant in short stretches like the postseason, but ever since acquiring Sheed, Detroit 5 conference finals, 2 finals and 1 title, and a missed rotation of closing out Robert Horry that cost his team a repeat. To give more perspective, here are some of the online comments written from fans about how great Wallace could have been if he truly tried. One called Sheed the most unstoppable post player since Hakeem in his prime, might be even more adept at scoring from anywhere on the floor than even Kobe. Having the proper mindset for someone his skill set, the 2000 Blazer team would have gone down in history as the greatest team of all time. Strong remarks from some fans. Sheed was often criticized for drifting to the 3-point line and shooting too many long bombs. The NBA super opposed to that back in the day, labeled lazy and needing to get in the post more. She would absolutely be the perfect player in today's NBA. If we go back in time, seeing a 21-year-old Rasheed Wallace dominate out of UNC, if he was available in the draft, would have been in the conversation as the #1 pick. Teams just will have to know how to maximize his potential and get him playing his best. His defense, also significantly underrated, gave a lot of the best guys problems during his time. Wallace's questionable shot making back in the day would have all the green light to jack up as many threes. In today's game, the league didn't know much better back then. Having the complete package, but super frustrating at times, not a player to measure by stats, good court vision, great rim protector, capable of getting more rebounds if he tried harder. That being said, Wallace never averaged 20 and 10, but had literally 0 weaknesses in his game. Former NBA champion stated, after going up against the 2 Wallaces in the 2005 finals, Nazi Muhammad, of course with San Antonio, detailed the difficulties of guarding Rasheed Wallace. Rasheed Wallace, an underappreciated talent. His touch from anywhere on the floor was just ridiculous. You couldn't ask for more from an inside-out guy. He could knock down the 3-point shot with both hands or take you into the post. I played with and against Sheed throughout my career, so I had a couple different views of him. As an opponent, he was tough to guard because he had this deadly shot with a really high release. He also perfected what I call the high booty back down. When you're guarding in the post, basic strategy calls for getting low on defense and utilizing your forearm to hold your ground. Most defenders like to place their forearm above the hip or in the low back, but with Sheed, instead of bending at the knees, he bends at his waist to keep his butt high, and then he proceeds to back you down ass first. That put you in an awkward situation, deciding whether to use your forearm and offhand on his butt or use your chest to hold your ground. That doesn't work unless you're strong enough to stay balanced. With his high release and touch, he would turn to his right shoulder and it was a bucket. When he got angry, there was no point even trying to stop him. Your only hope was for that anger to be channeled at the refs. A pissed Rasheed Wallace meant buckets when he focused. Shaq was the same way. With these elite big guys, you really didn't want to poke the bear. Muhammad played 1.5 seasons with the Pistons, saw it firsthand in the 05 finals. Although superstar Duncan did get the best of Sheed, wasn't easy. Timmy averaged just over 20 and 14, 42% from the field. Sheed 11 and 6, 2.5 blocks. Muhammad's 2005 teammate Robert Horry's reaction on Sheed after hearing what Iggy said about him.
If you think about Rasheed's body and Giannis' body, if you take away Giannis' cuts, it's Rasheed's body, you know? But here's the thing. Unless you watch Rasheed or play against Rasheed, you don't know how good Rasheed was. If you go back and look at our 2005 championship,
I've watched it.
Rasheed was cooking me, he was cooking Tim, and all of a sudden they go away from him. These teams, when we were in Portland against the Lakers, he was cooking us. They go away from him. These teams that had all had Rasheed, and they didn't. If I'd have been coaching Rasheed would have been my Shaq. He'd have had 50 touches a game. Rasheed was so fucking good. And I say this to this day, out of everybody that had to guard, Rasheed will always be in the top 3 of the hardest and the toughest people I had to guard. And Rasheed was shooting threes. His left hand was nice. His right hand was nice. He had post game. He had an outside game. But the only thing that kills Rasheed is all those texts and his attitude. So people look at that. They don't look at his game. They look at his attitude, how he got in with refs and how he got taken. But Rasheed, this day and age, because the way they train and the way they allow guys to do things, Rasheed would have been up there, man. I agree with Iggy on that one.
To add to Rasheed's underrated greatness, here's a clip when the Pistons players and guys part of the organization talked about Rasheed's impact right after his arrival to the Motor City.
The guy was an all-star. The guy can score inside, outside. The guy's a great defender. And I don't think we didn't even know how good of a defender he was until he got here.
I just thought he was a perfect fit. I thought he embodied what we wanted to be here. Here's a guy that wants to win. Here's a guy that's dedicated. He's unselfish. He's a great teammate. I just thought that, you know what, that guy's a Detroit Piston.
Pistons teammate Chauncey Billups said he would egg on referees to give Rasheed a technical because until he got a tech, he was one of the most unfocused players I ever played against. But once he got that technical, I don't care what coach he's playing for, I'm saying draw it to Sheed. Ain't no more play calls. No better example than Game 4 of the 2004 Finals at the height of his basketball powers when an injured Karl Malone couldn't play the rest of the way. Backup Slava Medvedenko drew an elbow to try to rattle the bigger Wallace. Rasheed went absolutely insane. From that moment on, all the momentum went to the Pistons. Shot 6 of 10 afterwards. The fadeaways, the and ones, a masterpiece 26.13 rebound game in a super low scoring playoff year from every team, a rude awakening. She gave us a taste of every aspect of his powers. That moment on, everybody knew Detroit was going to win the title. Backcourt teammate Rip Hamilton on The Ringer Real Ones with Raja Bell and Logan podcast talked about Wallace believing he's probably one of the most underrated players in our game, a guy that could have easily been a top 3 guy. Some great players will put Sheed as one of the top guys in that position with Duncan, Garnett, and Dirk. Hamilton didn't believe the Pistons without Sheed had enough to win the title and talked with Joe Dumars needing an inside presence, a guy who can demand a double team. Detroit would win 16 of its finals 19 regular season games with Sheed's addition. Hoops Hype also sat down with Kwame Brown, a former teammate of Rasheed's for the Pistons. When asked about some of his best teammates, Rasheed's name was mentioned. His personality, always constantly helping you and making sure you know where you're supposed to be at, always talking, never shuts up, always talking and so skilled too. Here's a clip of Kwame talking about Sheed.
I don't give a damn what nobody say. Sheed was one of the best teammates. She didn't like referees and she didn't like a lot of things. But that's one son bitch you want to be in the foxhole with. Rasheed is talking to you all the time. Oh yeah, get down there, boy, yeah. His enthusiasm is off the chain. Rasheed Wallace ain't perfect, I ain't perfect. But for his skill set, not to be in the league teaching that to other black men or other white men, for his skill set not to be a coach and passing that down before he leave this earth or before he leave whatever, that's a shame.
All in all, one title, despite being a career 14-7 guy and many lost opportunities that could have added to his legacy, from the Game 7 collapse 2000 from his team, netting in 30 points in an elimination game against Prime Shaq and Kobe, to the Game 7 final losses to San Antonio and the Lakers in 2010. She poured in 11-8 as a 35-year-old, started for the injured Kendrick Perkins. If he put everything together into becoming the best basketball player he possibly be, that's easily 3 more titles right there. As time goes by, only old school fans and players from the 2000s will truly understand how talented and unbelievably good Rasheed Wallace was. He might never make the Hall of Fame. His name might never get mentioned in the all-time greats, but a true matchup nightmare for everybody, especially when locked in the 2010 Conference Finals. Just go look up what the 35-year-old did to lock up Dwight Howard. Don't be surprised if Iggy praising Sheed won't be the last time another player gave high regards to the former Philadelphia native. Thank you so much for watching this video. What were some of your favorite memories of Rasheed Wallace? Do you love him or hate him? Let me know in the comments below. I love all of you. See you next time.